The air in the artisanal coffee shop, the daily grind, buzzed with the low hum of conversation and the clatter of ceramic mugs. I, Clara, sat across from my younger sister, Olivia, nursing a lukewarm latte. My stomach churned, not from the coffee, but from the knot of anxiety that had taken up permanent residence there ever since Olivia had announced her engagement. Olivia, with her cascade of honey blonde hair and a smile that could charm birds from the trees, was the undisputed golden child of our family. Our parents, bless their well-meaning but often oblivious hearts, had always doted on her. Olivia was the artist, the free spirit, the one who followed her passions, consequences be damned. I, on the other hand, was the responsible one, the planner, the one who picked up the pieces when Olivia's passions inevitably led to complications. So, Olivia began, her eyes sparkling with excitement. We've finally set a date. June 15th, at the Willow Creek Botanical Gardens. It's going to be magical. Willow Creek, the most expensive, exclusive wedding venue in the entire state. My latte suddenly tasted like ash. I knew, without asking, that this magical vision came with a price tag that would make even a lottery winner wince. Olivia and her fiancé, Daniel, were both creatively employed. Daniel was a freelance graphic designer, and Olivia taught pottery classes part-time. Their combined income wouldn't cover the deposit on Willow Creek, let alone the entire event. And that's where I, Clara, the ever-reliable older sister, came in. The unspoken expectation hung in the air between us, thick and suffocating. It sounds lovely, I managed, forcing a smile. Have you worked out the budget? Olivia waved a dismissive hand. Oh, details. We're still figuring things out. But the gardens are so us. Rustic, elegant, a little bit bohemian, just perfect. Perfectly expensive, I thought grimly. I took a deep breath. Olivia, I want you to have your dream wedding. I really do. But Willow Creek? Her eyes narrowed slightly, a flicker of annoyance crossing her face. Don't start, Clara. I know it's a lot, but you're hoping I'll help, I finished for her. She didn't deny it. Instead, she reached across the table and took my hand. Her grip surprisingly strong. You're the best sister ever, Clara. You always know how to make things work. And it would mean the world to us. The manipulation was subtle, almost invisible, but I felt it. The guilt trip. The appeal to my sense of familial duty, the unspoken threat of disapproval if I refused. It was a pattern we'd repeated countless times throughout our lives. I sighed. I'll see what I can do. And that was my first mistake. Over the next few weeks, seeing what I can do morphed into paying for everything. The venue deposit, the catering, organic, locally sourced, of course. The florist, who specialized in wildflower arrangements with a touch of whimsy. The photographer, a documentary-style artist who charged by the hour. The designer dress, a flowing, ethereal creation that cost more than my car. The hand-calligraphed invitations, the list went on and on. Each invoice, each email, each phone call chipped away at my savings, my peace of mind. My sanity. I was working overtime, skipping meals, and losing sleep. All to fund a wedding that was rapidly spiraling out of control. But I kept telling myself it was worth it. It was for Olivia. For family. For that elusive sense of belonging and approval I'd always craved. The planning process was a blur of floral arrangements, menu tastings, and seating charts. Olivia, naturally, was in her element, flitting from one decision to the next like a butterfly. On a sugar rush. Daniel, bless his clueless heart, seemed content to let Olivia take the reins. Nodding along and occasionally offering vague pronouncements like, yeah, that looks nice. I, meanwhile, was relegated to the role of the invisible benefactor. I was the ATM. The logistical coordinator, the problem solver, but never a participant. Whenever I tried to offer an opinion or suggestion, I was met with polite but firm resistance. "Oh, Clara, that's not really our style," Olivia would say, her smile tight. "We're going for something a bit more organic." Organic seemed to be code for expensive and impractical. The first real warning sign came about a month before the wedding. I was reviewing the guest list, making sure all the addresses were correct, when I noticed something odd. My name wasn't on it. I called Olivia, trying to keep my voice calm. "Hey, I was just looking at the guest list, Anne. I don't see my name." There was a pause, a moment of uncomfortable silence. "Oh, right," Olivia said, her voice a little too bright. "We've decided to keep the ceremony really small. Just immediate family and a few close friends. It's going to be very intimate." "Intimate?" I repeated, my heart sinking. "But I'm your sister." "I know, Clara," she said, her tone softening, "and we love you. But it's just not the vibe we're going for. We want it to be really, really special and, well, you know." I didn't know. I didn't understand. I was paying for this special and intimate event. Yet I wasn't considered special or intimate enough to attend. The phone call ended with a flurry of platitudes and empty promises. "We'll have a separate celebration with you later," Olivia said. "Just the two of us." I hung up, feeling numb. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. It wasn't just about the wedding, it was about the years of unspoken resentment. The constant feeling of being taken for granted, the realization that my sister, the person I'd always tried to protect and support, didn't value me at all. The anger came later, slow and simmering. It started as a flicker, a tiny spark of indignation. But it quickly grew into a raging inferno. I had been used, manipulated, and discarded. And I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I spent the next few days in a state of furious, calculated planning. My initial instinct was to lash out, to confront Olivia and Daniel, to demand an explanation. An apology, something. But I knew that wouldn't accomplish anything. They would deny, deflect, and ultimately, blame me for ruining their special day. No, I needed a different approach. Something subtle, something elegant. Something that would hit them where it hurt the most, their precious wedding. Since I had been the primary point of contact for all the vendors, and since all the payments had come from my account, I still had a significant amount of control. The contracts were all in my name. The deposits were non-refundable, but the final payments hadn't been made yet. A plan began to form in my mind, a plan so devious, so intricate, so perfectly tailored to their specific brand of self-absorbed entitlement that it made me smile. The first step was to gather information. I meticulously reviewed all the contracts, invoices, and emails. I made a list of every vendor, every service, every detail of the wedding. I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with. Then, I started making phone calls. My first call was to the Willow Creek Botanical Gardens. I spoke to the events coordinator, a woman named Sarah, who had been unfailingly polite and helpful throughout the planning process. "Hello, Sarah," I said, keeping my voice calm and professional. "This is Clara Hastings, calling about the Olivia Hastings and Daniel Miller wedding on June 15th. "Yes, Miss Hastings," Sarah replied. "How can I help you?" "I need to make some adjustments to the booking," I said, choosing my words carefully. "Adjustments?" Sarah sounded surprised. "The wedding is just a few weeks away." "I know," I said. "But there have been some unforeseen circumstances. I need to postpone the event." "Postpone?" Sarah's voice rose slightly. "Ms. Hastings, the deposit is non-refundable. And at this late stage, it's unlikely we'll be able to rebook the date." "I understand," I said. "But I'm not asking for a refund. I'm simply asking to shift the booking to a later date. Perhaps indefinitely." There was a long pause. Indefinitely? Yes, I said. I'm not sure when, or if, the wedding will be rescheduled. But I'd like to keep the booking open for now. Sarah was clearly confused, but she agreed to my request. She said she would need to speak to her manager. But she would put a hold on the booking and contact me with further details. I hung up, feeling a surge of adrenaline. The first domino had fallen. Next, I called the caterer. I explained the situation, using the same vague language about unforeseen circumstances and postponing indefinitely. The caterer was even more reluctant than Sarah, pointing out that they had already ordered the food and hired the staff. But I held firm, reminding them that the final payment hadn't been made, and that I was the one who had signed the contract. One by one, I contacted each vendor, the florist, the photographer, the musicians, the officiant, the rental company that was providing the chairs and tables. I used the same script, the same carefully crafted ambiguity. I didn't cancel anything outright, I simply postponed it, leaving a trail of confusion and uncertainty in my wake. The final call was to the designer boutique where Olivia had purchased her dress. This was the trickiest part, as the dress had already been altered and paid for. But I had a plan. I explained to the boutique owner that Olivia had changed her mind about the dress. She wanted something simpler, more understated. I asked if it would be possible to exchange the dress for a different one, perhaps a less expensive model. The boutique owner was understandably skeptical. "Miss Hastings," she said, "your sister tried on dozens of dresses before she chose this one. It was a custom order, and it's been altered to her specific measurements." "I know," I said. "But she's having second thoughts. And, well, it's my money, isn't it?" The boutique owner sighed. "Technically, yes. But I'm willing to pay a restocking fee," I said. "Anne, I'm sure we can find something else that she'll like. Something less extravagant." In the end, the boutique owner agreed. She said she would hold the dress and allow Olivia to exchange it, but she warned me that there would be a significant fee. I hung up, feeling a mixture of exhilaration and exhaustion. The plan was in motion. The seeds of chaos had been sown. Now, all I had to do was wait. The days leading up to the wedding were eerily quiet. Olivia and Daniel didn't contact me, which was unusual. I assumed they were busy with last-minute preparations, blissfully unaware of the impending disaster. My parents, however, were another story. They called me several times, asking about the wedding, wondering why I hadn't been more involved. I gave them vague answers, deflecting their questions, playing the role of the supportive but slightly distant sister. "Everything's fine," I told them. "Olivia and Daniel have it all under control." I knew they were suspicious, but they couldn't prove anything. And I wasn't about to give them any ammunition. The morning of June 15th dawned bright and sunny, a perfect day for a garden wedding. I woke up early, feeling a strange mixture of anticipation and dread. I knew what was about to happen, but I couldn't predict exactly how it would unfold. I spent the morning checking my phone, waiting for the inevitable calls and texts. I imagined Olivia and Daniel arriving at Willow Creek, expecting to find a beautifully decorated venue, a lavish spread of food, a crowd of adoring guests. Instead, they would find nothing. The first call came around 10 a.m. It was Olivia, her voice frantic. "Clara. What's going on?" "We're at Willow Creek, Anne. There's nothing here. No flowers, no tables, no chairs, nothing." I took a deep breath, trying to sound surprised. "What? What do you mean?" "I mean, the venue is empty. The events coordinator said the booking was postponed indefinitely." "What did you do?" "I didn't do anything," I said, feigning innocence. I called to check on things. And they told me there were some issues. I assumed you knew about it." Olivia was sputtering, her voice rising in pitch. Issues? What issues? We paid for everything. You paid for everything. I know, I said. But maybe there was a misunderstanding. Maybe you should talk to them directly. I hung up, feeling a twinge of guilt. But it was quickly overshadowed by a sense of satisfaction. The chaos had begun. The next few hours were a blur of frantic phone calls, angry texts, and increasingly desperate pleas. Olivia called me repeatedly, accusing me of sabotage, demanding that I fix the situation. Daniel called, sounding confused and defeated. My parents called, demanding answers, threatening to disown me. I ignored them all. I let the calls go to voicemail, the texts go unread. I had set the wheels in motion, and now I was going to let the situation play out. I later learned, from various sources, mostly gossiping relatives, that the wedding had been a complete disaster. Olivia and Daniel had tried to salvage the situation, calling every vendor, begging them to show up, offering to pay extra. But it was too late. The caterer couldn't magically conjure up a feast for 200 guests. The florist couldn't create elaborate floral arrangements in a matter of hours. The rental company couldn't deliver chairs and tables on such short notice. The guests, who had traveled from all over the country, arrived at Willow Creek to find nothing. They were confused, angry, and disappointed. Some of them demanded their money back for travel expenses. Others simply left, shaking their heads in disbelief. Olivia and Daniel, humiliated and defeated, ended up having a makeshift ceremony in a nearby park, with a handful of close friends and family. They exchanged vows under a scraggly oak tree, with no flowers, no music, no food. It was a far cry from the magical garden wedding they had envisioned. The dress never got worn. Olivia was unable to find a suitable replacement and refused to wear her original gown. The weeks and months that followed were awkward, to say the least. Olivia and Daniel refused to speak to me. My parents were furious, accusing me of ruining their daughter's wedding and embarrassing the entire family. I became the black sheep, the outcast, the villain of the story. I tried to explain my side of the story, to tell them how I had been used and manipulated, how I had been excluded from the wedding I had paid for. But they didn't want to hear it. They were too blinded by their loyalty to Olivia, too invested in their image of the perfect family, to see the truth. I eventually gave up trying to defend myself. But here is where the story takes an unexpected turn. While I had severed ties with my immediate family, the fallout from the cancelled wedding reached far beyond my immediate circle. Aunts, uncles, and cousins, many of whom I hadn't spoken to in years, began reaching out. At first, the messages were cautious, probing. We heard about the wedding, what happened? But as I cautiously shared my side of the story, omitting the deliberate sabotage, of course, and focusing on the misunderstandings and vendor issues, Olivia always was a bit much, one aunt confessed over a long phone call. She always got her way, didn't she? Remember that time, she demanded. A pony for her 10th birthday, and your parents actually got her one, even though they could barely afford it? Another cousin, a successful lawyer, offered her services pro bono. If you need any help with those contracts, let me know. Sounds like you were taken advantage of. Slowly, painstakingly, I began to rebuild my relationships with the extended family. I discovered that I wasn't the only one who had felt the sting of Olivia's entitlement, the weight of her expectations. I wasn't the only one who had been quietly resentful of the way our parents had favored her. These newfound connections became a lifeline. They offered me support, understanding, and a sense of belonging that I had never felt with my immediate family. They helped me realize that I wasn't the villain, that I wasn't alone. And, perhaps most surprisingly, the cancelled wedding had an unexpected impact on Olivia and Daniel's relationship. The stress of the disastrous event, the financial burden of the unpaid vendors, the humiliation of having their perfect day turn into a public farce, put a strain on their marriage. Without the fairy tale, the cracks began to show. I heard through the grapevine. My newly supportive aunts were excellent sources of information, that Olivia and Daniel were constantly fighting, blaming each other for the wedding debacle. Daniel, who had always been passive and agreeable, started to resent Olivia's controlling nature, her extravagant spending habits, her constant need for attention. Olivia, in turn, blamed Daniel for not being supportive enough, for not taking charge, for not being the strong, decisive man she had always wanted. Their magical romance, stripped of its Instagram-worthy facade, turned out to be rather ordinary. And, like many ordinary relationships, it eventually crumbled under the weight of its own dysfunction. They separated a year after the wedding, citing irreconcilable differences. As for me, I moved on with my life. I focused on my career, I built new friendships, and I learned to value my own worth, independent of my family's approval. I realized that I didn't need to be the responsible one, the people pleaser, the fixer. I could be my own person, with my own dreams, my own desires, my own boundaries. The cancelled wedding, which had initially seemed like the ultimate betrayal, turned out to be a catalyst for positive change. It forced me to confront my own patterns of behavior, to reevaluate my relationships. The price of the petals, the unseen cost, was high. But in the end, it was worth it. I had lost a sister, but I had gained a sense of self, a newfound strength, and a family, an extended one, at least, that truly valued me for who I was, not for what I could do for them. And that, I realized, was priceless. The final phone call I made, after the fallout, was to Sarah, the event coordinator. Sarah, this is Clara, regarding the open booking. Miss Hastings, yes, how can I assist? Close the booking. There will be no rescheduling. Of course. The feeling that washed over me was, finally, peace. The chapter was closed.